My name is Natasha Howe. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I wasn't treated like a daughter. I was treated like help, not even respected help, just someone who was expected to clean, cook, and disappear. I still remember the night it became clear. My mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, and said, "From tomorrow, you'll earn your place in this house." No warmth, no hesitation, just a sentence that quietly erased my identity. And I nodded, because I didn't know I had the right to refuse. We lived in a large, polished house that always looked perfect from the outside. White walls, trimmed garden, everything in place. But inside, it was cold. My younger sister, Elena, was the golden child. She got piano lessons, new dresses, birthday parties with laughter. I got a list. Every morning, there it was folded neatly on the kitchen counter. Laundry, floors, dinner by 7. My father barely looked at me unless something was wrong. And somehow, something was always wrong. I tried to be good. I really did. I woke up before everyone else, scrubbed floors until my hands ached, learned recipes from scratch just to avoid criticism. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. One night, I burned the edges of a pie crust. My mother didn't yell. She just looked at me and said, "Even a maid would do better." That sentence stayed with me longer than any scream could. It settled deep inside, turning into something heavy, something that made me question my worth. School became my escape, but even that didn't last. When I turned 17, my father called me into his study. He didn't sit down. He didn't offer me a chair either. "Elena needs more attention," he said flatly. "You'll be staying home more often." I knew what that meant. My education, my future, quietly traded for my sister's comfort. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. But the words never came. Because when you're raised to feel small, even your voice forgets how to rise. Years passed like that, quietly, painfully. I became invisible in my home. Guests would come over and mistake me for hired staff, and my parents never corrected them. Sometimes, they'd even play along. "Natasha handles everything round here," my mother would say with a smile, as if it was something to be proud of. I would stand there, holding a tray, forcing a polite nod, while something inside me slowly broke apart. But pain has a strange way of shaping you. It either buries you or builds something stronger underneath. I started saving money secretly, small amounts from grocery errands, leftover change, anything I could hide. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time, I felt a tiny spark of control, a quiet rebellion growing in silence. I didn't know exactly what I was planning, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to live like this forever. The breaking point came on Elena's 21st birthday. The house was filled with guests, laughter echoing through every room. I was in the kitchen, as always, moving between ovens and trays, invisible as ever. Then I heard my mother's voice from the dining room. "Eleanor deserves everything. She's the one who'll carry this family forward." There was applause, smiles, pride, and in that moment, something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet realization that I didn't belong there at all. That night, after everyone left and the house fell silent, I sat alone in the kitchen. My hands smelled like detergent, my feet throbbed, and my heart felt empty. I looked around at the spotless counters, the polished floors, and for the first time, I didn't feel proud. I felt used. I whispered to myself, "This isn't your life." And somehow, hearing it out loud made it real, made it possible, made it dangerous. Because the truth was, I was starting to wake up. And once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. The next morning, nothing had changed except me. The same list waited on the counter. The same silence filled the house. The same expectations hung in the air, but something inside me had shifted. I moved through my tasks like always, but now I was watching everything more carefully, listening, noticing the way my father locked his study drawer every evening, the way my mother guarded certain conversations when I entered the room. It was subtle, but it was there, secrets. And for the first time, I realized this house wasn't just built on control. It was built on something hidden. A few days later, I found my first crack in their perfect world. I was dusting the hallway near my father's study when I noticed the door slightly open, something that never happened. I hesitated, my heart beating faster than it should. Then I stepped inside. The room smelled like old paper and authority. Everything was neat, organized, except for one file left on the desk. My name was on it. I froze. For a second, I thought it was a mistake, but it wasn't. My hands trembled as I reached for it, a strange mix of fear and curiosity pulling me forward. Inside were documents I didn't understand at first. Legal terms, property references, dates. My eyes scanned the pages until one line made my breath catch. Primary beneficiary, Natasha Howe. I blinked, convinced I had read it wrong. But it was there, clear, undeniable. My name, attached to something important, something valuable. My mind raced. Why would my name be here? Why had they never told me? And more importantly, what else were they hiding? Before I could read further, I heard footsteps approaching. My heart jumped into my throat. I quickly placed the file back exactly where it was and slipped out of the room just as my father's shadow appeared at the end of the hallway. "What are you doing?" he asked sharply. I lowered my gaze instantly, falling back into the role I had played for years. "Cleaning," I replied softly. He stared at me for a moment longer than usual, like he was searching for something, then walked past me without another word. But I felt it. The tension, the shift. Something had changed. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept circling back to that file, to my name printed on something I wasn't supposed to see. It didn't make sense. If I was nothing to them, why was I written into anything important? Questions piled up, heavy and relentless. And with each one, my fear slowly turned into something else. Determination. For the first time in my life, I didn't just want answers. I needed them. So I started paying closer attention. I memorized routines, watched patterns, listened through half-closed doors. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, pieces started coming together. There were phone calls my parents would only take in private, mentions of the will whispered like it was something sacred or dangerous, and every time my name came up, the room would go quiet, like it wasn't supposed to exist in that conversation at all. Then one evening, everything escalated. I was passing by the living room when I heard my mother's voice, tense and urgent. "We can't let her find out," she said. I stopped in my tracks, my pulse instantly rising. My father replied, lower but firm, "She won't. She doesn't even know what to look for." There was a pause. Then my mother spoke again, softer this time. "And if she does?" My father didn't hesitate. "Then we handle it." That sentence, it didn't sound like concern. It sounded like a warning. I walked away slowly, my hands shaking, my thoughts racing faster than ever. This wasn't just about control anymore. This wasn't just favoritism or emotional neglect. There was something bigger buried beneath all of it, something they were afraid of me discovering. And now, I wasn't just the girl who cleaned their house. I was the one they were hiding the truth from, and I was getting closer to it. From that moment on, I stopped seeing myself as powerless. I moved differently, spoke less, listened more. Every room felt like a stage, every conversation like a clue waiting to be uncovered. I memorized the sound of keys, the rhythm of footsteps, the exact hour my father locked his study. And one night, when the house finally fell into that heavy, predictable silence, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for answers anymore. I was going to take them. It was past midnight when I slipped into the hallway, my heartbeat echoing louder than my footsteps. The study door stood closed, just like always, but this time, I was ready. Weeks of observation had taught me enough. The spare key was hidden behind the old bookshelf, tucked so carefully, almost felt intentional, like they wanted to believe no one would ever look there. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the air thick with secrets and quiet authority. I went straight for the drawer, the same one he guarded like it held his entire world. It clicked open with a soft, almost reluctant sound. Inside were files, neatly stacked, labeled with names and dates. I found mine faster this time. Natasha Howe. My hands were steadier now, but my chest felt tight as I opened it again, ready to face whatever truth they had buried from me all these years. This time, I read everything, slowly, carefully, and with each line, the ground beneath me shifted. It wasn't just a will, it was everything. The house, the land, even the business my father always bragged about. All of it legally tied to me. My name wasn't there by accident. It was at the center of it all. My breath caught as I reached the final page, where a signature stood out like a ghost from the past. My grandmother's name. I froze. Memories I hadn't touched in years came rushing back. Her gentle voice, the way she used to hold my hand a little longer than necessary, like she knew something I didn't. She was the only one who ever looked at me like I mattered. And now, somehow, she had left everything to me. Not to my parents, not to Elena, to me. The girl they treated like she didn't belong. The girl they tried to erase. Footsteps echoed suddenly from the hallway, snapping me back into the present. I closed the file quickly, my heart pounding as fear rushed in again. But this time, it wasn't the same kind of fear. It wasn't small or helpless. It was sharp, focused. I locked the drawer, placed the key back exactly where I found it, and slipped out just seconds before the light in the hole we flicked on. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall as everything settled into place. The years of silence, the control, the way they kept me hidden, uneducated, dependent. It wasn't cruelty without reason. It was strategy. They needed me small because the truth, the real truth, would change everything, and they knew it. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was trapped in that house. I felt like I was holding it together, and they had no idea. I knew. The days that followed felt strangely calm, almost to calm. I went back to my routine, back to the quiet obedience they expected. But inside, everything had changed. I wasn't working for them anymore. I was watching them, studying every move, every word, every nervous glance they thought I didn't notice. My mother's tone grew sharper, my father more impatient, like something was slipping out of their control. And for the first time, I understood why. The truth wasn't just dangerous, it was inevitable. Then came the announcement that shifted everything into motion. Elena's engagement party, a grand event, of course hundreds of guests, influential people, extended family, all invited to celebrate the perfect daughter. My mother was obsessed with every detail. My father focused on appearances, making sure everything reflected power and prestige. And me, I was given the longest list I had ever seen, carrying coordination, decorations, guest service, every responsibility placed on my shoulders, just like always. But this time, I didn't feel burdened. I felt prepared. The night of the party arrived like a storm dressed in silk. The house was glowing with lights, laughter echoing through every corner, glasses clinking as guests admired the elegance around them. I moved quietly between rooms, dressed simply, blending into the background like I always had. But my eyes were different, focused, calm. I watched my parents greet guests with practiced smiles, watched Elena bask in attention she believed she deserved. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her because she had no idea what was coming. Halfway through the evening, my father raised his glass for a speech. The room fell silent, all eyes on him as he began praising Elena, her achievements, her future, her place as the heart of the family. The words were polished, rehearsed, empty. I stood at the edge of the room, listening carefully, feeling that familiar weight in my chest, but this time, it didn't crush me. It fueled me, because I knew something they didn't. As the applause faded, I took a slow step forward, then another. The room didn't notice at first. Why would they? I was just the girl who served drinks. But then I reached the center, right beside my father, and that's when the silence shifted. Confusion spread across faces, whispers rising like a wave. My mother's smile froze instantly. "Natasha, what are you doing?" she asked under her breath, her voice tight with warning. I didn't look at her. I looked at the guests, at the family members who had watched me disappear for years. And then, calmly, I spoke. "I think it's time everyone hears the full story." My father's expression darkened, his hand tightening round the glass. "This isn't the place," he said sharply. But I didn't step back. "Not this time." "No," I replied, my voice steady in a way it had never been before. "This is exactly the place." I reached into my bag and pulled out the documents, the same ones they had hidden, protected, buried. The room grew quieter than I had ever heard it, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I held the papers up just enough for them to see. Not fully. Not yet. Suspense hung heavy in the air, thick and undeniable. My mother took a step forward, her voice trembling now. "Put those away." But I didn't move, because this wasn't just a moment. This was the truth, stepping into the light, and there was no stopping it anymore. I took a slow breath, feeling every eye in the room lock onto me. My hands didn't shake anymore, not like they used to. "For years," I began, my voice calm, but cutting through the silence, "I was told I had to earn my place in this house." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's face drained of color. I was treated like I didn't belong here, like I was nothing more than someone to serve this family. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. But the truth is, this house was never theirs to begin with. A ripple of whispers spread instantly, confusion turning into curiosity. I unfolded the document slowly, deliberately, making sure every movement built tension instead of rushing through it. "These," I said, lifting the papers slightly, "are the legal documents of my grandmother's will." I glanced toward my parents, holding their gaze for the first time without fear. The same will they've been hiding, the same one they were so sure I'd never find. My father stepped forward quickly, his voice low and threatening. "Enough, Natasha." But it didn't carry power anymore. "Not tonight." I turned the final page toward the guests, my voice rising just enough to reach every corner of the room. "Everything you see here, the house, the land, the business." I let the silence stretch for a second longer. It was all left to me. The reaction was instant. Gasps, shock, eyes widening as the perfect image my parents built began to crack in real time. Eleanor looked frozen, her smile gone, her world quietly collapsing around her. And for once, I wasn't the invisible one in the room. My mother shook her head, stepping closer as if denying it could somehow erase it. "That's not true," she said quickly, her voice breaking under pressure. "You don't understand those documents." But I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. "I understand enough," I replied, steady and clear. "I understand why I was kept out of school, why I was made dependent, why I was never allowed to grow." I finally met her eyes then, because if I did, you knew I'd take back what was already mine. The room had completely shifted now. The admiration my parents once held had turned into something else: doubt, judgment, quiet realization. My father tried one last time, his voice louder, desperate to regain control. "This is a misunderstanding. She's confused." But before he could say another word, I stepped closer, closing the distance between us for the first time in my life. "No," I said softly, but firmly enough to silence him. "You were just hoping I'd stay small forever." I lowered the paper slowly, letting the moment breathe, letting the truth settle into every corner of that room. Then I took a step back, not out of fear, but out of choice. "I'm not here to destroy you," I said quietly, my voice no longer sharp, but steady with something deeper. "I'm here to end this." There was a difference, and they felt it. Everyone did, because this wasn't revenge born from anger anymore. It was closure built from truth. I walked away from the center of the room, past the guests, past the whispers, past the life that once held me captive. No one stopped me. No one could. For the first time, I wasn't leaving the house as someone being pushed out. I was walking out as someone who finally understood her worth. And behind me, everything my parents had built on lies was slowly falling apart, not because I destroyed it, but because the truth finally stood where silence used to live. And the lesson: sometimes they try to break you, not because you're weak, but because they know you were never meant to stay beneath them.